If you've spent any time at all engaging with the creative side of technology lately, you've definitely run into this huge dichotomy in the generative AI
Oh,
space.
absolutely. It's impossible to miss.
On one hand, you have this genuinely mind-blowing creative work that feels like, I don't know, a radical glimpse into the future of storytelling.
And on the other hand, there is, well, let's be honest about it.
Yeah.
There's a massive, overwhelming pile of absolute digital slop.
Slop is the perfect word for it.
And that dichotomy really defines the whole moment we're in. The critical debate that's raging right now isn't about if a machine can make an image or write some text. We know it can. It's about establishing the hierarchy.
The hierarchy.
Yeah, is AI an artist in its own right? Or is it simply the most powerful resource-compressing tool that's ever been handed to an existing skilled human artist?
And that's our mission for this deep dive, right? To get into the source material that helps us separate the wheat from the chaff.
Exactly. The genuine, high-quality, human-driven work from the low-effort, commercially marginal content farm junk.
We are absolutely unpacking a core argument that resonates through all of our sources today. The quality of the AI output depends almost entirely on the expertise, the intense effort, and the specific honed intent of the human creator standing behind the prompt.
It's the perfect analogy. It's like the difference between an amateur who just picked up a camera for the first time
Right.
and a seasoned cinematographer using that exact same camera to capture an impossibly complex visual narrative. The tool is identical, but the outcome is, well, it's worlds apart.
To really set the stage for such a massive technological and, I guess, artistic disruption, we need a little bit of historical context.
And for that, we look to George Miller, the iconic director of the Mad Max franchise. He's a guy who has spent decades understanding how tools actually shape cinema.
Miller's perspective is so incredibly grounding. I mean, he just refuses to frame the current moment as some kind of unprecedented existential crisis for art.
No, he sees it as the next logical step. It's part of a very long evolution of creative technology. He identifies AI as, and I'm quoting here, arguably the most dynamically evolving tool in making moving image.
And crucially, he accepts that it is here to stay and change things. He doesn't fight it. He positions himself as a filmmaker who has always been driven by the capabilities of the tools available to him, from, celluloid to digital VFX.
And that leads to his most insightful contribution to this whole debate, the historical analogy, which really helps contextualize the deep anxiety that we're all feeling today.
He likens the current AI debate and all the controversy around automated execution to shifts that happened way back during the Renaissance, specifically the introduction of oil paint.
Right, which sounds so simple to us now. Oil paint, big deal.
But at the time, it was completely revolutionary. It gave artists this radical new creative flexibility. They had the ability to revise, to blend colors seamlessly, to build up these luminous layers over time.
Things that were extremely difficult, if not, impossible, with the faster drying mediums they were using, like fresco or tempera.
And that shift caused a huge cultural controversy, didn't it?
A massive one. The sources tell us that some conservative critics at the time argued that a true master artist shouldn't need corrections.
So the idea was you had to get it right the first time.
Exactly. They believed a true artist should be able to commit the image to the canvas instantly and perfectly. But the artists, the high EQ creators of their day, they embraced the new flexibility.
And art didn't die.
Not only did it endure, but painting itself evolved. It explored new depths of realism and expression that were previously unattainable.
So the established art form was initially defensive, but ultimately the new tool allowed it to blossom. That is a pattern that just keeps repeating itself.
Miller pointed to the exact same debate unfolding in the mid-19th century with the arrival of photography.
Absolutely. When photography arrived, so many people predicted the death of painting. They argued that if a machine could mechanically capture reality perfectly, what was the point of a painter struggling to imitate it?
But of course, that's not what happened. Painting didn't disappear. It just changed. It was liberated from the task of pure documentary realism, and it was pushed into abstraction, into impressionism, expressionism.
While photography established itself as its own distinct art form, the new tool just forced the established medium to redefine its core purpose.
So to follow that pattern, oil paint augmenting depth, photography forcing expression AI won't replace human artists. but it will fundamentally force us to redefine what creative effort even means when the mechanical execution part is automated, nearly instant,
The execution becomes cheap.
and the idea becomes invaluable.
And Miller sees the potential for some real good in this disruption. His great hope is that this new tool will radically lower the barriers to entry, making screen storytelling available to anyone who has a true calling to it.
He's ushering in a truly egalitarian form of creativity.
He mentioned observing kids, not even in their teens yet, using generative AI to make films and put footage together. They're experimenting with narrative, with visual scope and pacing, without having to raise money.
Or rent expensive equipment, or navigate all the traditional restrictive production bottlenecks that used to just stifle young talent.
That's the tremendous promise then. AI acts as the ultimate resource compressor. It lowers that barrier to entry so significantly and gives you instantaneous feedback on your creative decisions.
But of course, that promise comes tightly wrapped in a whole lot of professional anxiety.
Of course.
The entire debate, as Miller summarizes it, is about finding that critical and, frankly, ethical balance between human creativity and machine capability. The anxiety comes from the blurring of those lines and that constant fear that the machine capability will overwhelm or just saturate human creativity.
This anxiety brings us directly to the core mission of our deep dive today, proving that the best AI-generated content isn't created by the easiest prompt, but by humans with a high augmentation quotient, AQ.
That's it. The artist who knows exactly what they're doing before they even touch the machine.
And the absolute benchmark for quality right now, the case study that really defines this high AQ model, is that sci-fi cinematic universe, Neural Viz, created by Josh Kerrigan.
Yes, Kerrigan's work has been getting a ton of attention, and for good reason. It's achieved this near-impossible consensus from critics and observers who are calling it a historic accomplishment.
It's frequently cited as among the first pieces of AI filmmaking that truly does not suck, which, in this often maligned medium, that's about the highest compliment you can possibly pay something.
That does not suck label is exactly what we need to unpack, because this model represents what our sources are calling the augmentation engine. It's a paradigm where the high-quality creator leverages AI not to replace their vision, but to scale it up.
To scale it exponentially.
Exactly, to execute these sophisticated, visually ambitious projects with an efficiency that was just impossible before.
Okay, let's dig into the how. What is the critical differentiator that separates Kerrigan from, the people producing that vast ocean of slop?
It all boils down to provenance and his intrinsic qualities. His success is explicitly tied to his existing decade-long professional experience in the field.
So he's bringing established comedic timing, deep writing skills, and a specific, lovingly imagined visual universe to the table already.
Yes, the AI is a function of his talent. It is not the source of his talent.
So he isn't just asking the AI to come up with the jokes or the plot points. The foundation is still entirely human.
100%. The source material really emphasizes that Kerrigan is meticulously writing his scripts the old-fashioned way. This is vital. It ensures the narrative foundation, the complex character humor, the overall pacing, all of it remains under tight, expert human control.
So the AI is primarily being used as the execution layer, like the visual effects department, the costuming, the set design.
That's a perfect way to put it. It makes the AI function more like a sophisticated visual effects pipeline than some generative idea machine.
But the visual fidelity of Neural Viz is what is just stunning people. How on earth is he achieving that quality by himself?
He treats the AI like a high-tech visual mask and an execution tool. So get this, he actually performs all the characters himself.
No way.
Yes. Then he uses facial motion capture tools and AI to map his own expressions onto the alien avatars. He's essentially turning himself into a one-person digital puppeteer.
Like an Andy Serkis operating from his swivel chair.
Exactly. He maintains total control over the performance, the timing, the narrative flow, everything.
That sounds like a massive amount of technical iteration, just a huge time investment. It's not a simple 5-second prompt and hitting the generate button.
The sources confirm this emphatically. Using AI in this high AQ context is explicitly defined not as a crutch, but as advanced CGI, effects editing, and meticulous, painstaking prompt engineering.
So how much time are we talking about?
One of his recent 11-minute videos, which has that Hollywood grade polish, took him over 120 hours of focused work to complete.
120 hours for 11 minutes of content. That's a brutal schedule. And it completely reframes the public perception of what high-end AI filmmaking actually is.
It does.
If the AI is supposed to be so efficient, why is it still taking 120 hours? Where is all that time being spent?
That is the critical distinction. He's not spending those hours on rendering, because the AI makes that nearly instant. He's not spending it modeling 3D assets, which AI automates.
So what's left?
He is spending those 120 hours on the human tasks that AI is currently terrible at, achieving visual consistency across hundreds of different shots, refining the specific language in the prompts to get the exact emotional tone he's after, masking generation errors, performing complex, multi-layered post-production editing.
In short, he's doing the human quality control and the creative direction that ensures the output looks like a film and not just a slideshow of disconnected, weird-looking images.
Precisely. The efficiency isn't eliminating the time, it's trading the financial cost of a huge crew for the time investment of a single, highly specialized expert.
So this level of focused effort proves his achievement is rooted in his decade-long experience in this field.
Right. He is not, as the critique noted, some random Joe who magically got to his level thanks to AI. He is a highly experienced professional who has simply found a way to externalize his entire production studio into an AI software suite.
The AI, then, is functioning as the ultimate resource compressor.
It is the ultimate resource compressor. Just think about the traditional constraints of independent filmmaking. You need a huge budget, you suffer these painfully long production cycles, and you are strictly limited by the physical scope of your visuals. You can only film what you can build or what you can afford to travel to.
Kerrigan just circumvents all of that.
He does. By substituting all those expensive resources, the sets, the large crews, the specialized VFX artists, with generative AI tools, he achieves what the sources correctly characterize as Hollywood-grade entertainment visual scope, all from his home office.
And that's where the value proposition truly becomes disruptive, isn't it? And the industry is responding to this high IQ model very aggressively.
The ultimate validation is always the market response. The fact that Kerrigan has been approached by every major studio and network that confirms the viability of this augmentation engine model.
They aren't just impressed by the cool visuals.
No, they are actively seeking to acquire this efficiently produced, high-quality intellectual property that is clearly driven by proven human talent.
They're looking for the director who has already mastered the blend of traditional storytelling skills and advanced prompt engineering. They're essentially outsourcing their most expensive R&D.
And, ethically, this neural viz model provides a powerful counter-narrative to all those pervasive fears about AI plagiarism or lack of authenticity. It demonstrates that generative AI can be integrated responsibly under tight, expert human control.
The value is clearly dictated by the human intent and the meticulous effort, not just the flood of pixels the machine generates.
Exactly.
So if the augmentation engine represents the best of what AI can do for a talented artist, we have to examine its dark parallel, the saturation engine.
Yes. The unavoidable flip side of the coin. The massive, crushing influx of low-quality, commercially marginal content that is enabled by the very ease of access we were just praising.
The AI slop, that term has become so ubiquitous.
It really has. The instant these tools became easy to use, the internet was just flooded with what critics are calling the lowest possible effort AI dreck. The most brutal critique we found argued that the primary purpose of these mass-market generative tools is simply, and I quote, filling the internet to the brim with crap.
And this isn't just a critique of aesthetics, is it? It's a real economic threat. The flood of low-value content poses a systemic market risk that fundamentally changes the cost structure of the entire internet.
It absolutely does. When generation is free and easy, the volume is infinite. This dramatically dilutes consumer attention and, crucially, it increases the cost of discovery.
What do you mean by the cost of discovery?
The distribution platforms, from search engines to streaming services, are now forced to implement these unprecedented filtering systems. They're basically installing massive digital dams just to manage the deluge of noise so that you, the user, can find anything of value.
So if everyone can generate 1,000 low-effort images or short pieces of text in an hour, nothing feels unique or valuable anymore, not unless there's a clear, unique human fingerprint on it.
That Kerrigan level of effort and expertise, that's what you have to have stamped on it.
We can actually quantify this creative dichotomy by looking at the current adoption data for multimodal media creation. While AI is being adopted rapidly for simple tasks, the data reveals its struggle to produce complex, time-based media without that heavy, high AQ human intervention.
Let's look at the numbers. The data on weekly usage patterns tells a really clear story about what most people are actually using these tools for today.
And what's the headline?
We see clear success in utility tasks. The use of generative AI for general utility like information retrieval, summarization, basic text generation has more than doubled. It soared from 11% weekly use to 24%, which establishes it as the #1 use case.
Okay, so basic utility is a hit. What about images?
Image generation, which is the simplest form of complex media creation, also rose significantly. It went from 5% to 9% weekly use. That shows a rapid democratization of basic visual content.
So quick, low-effort utility or basic static visual content is booming. That's the slot production pipeline right there. But what about the really difficult time-based media? The stuff Kerrigan spends 120 hours on.
This is the critical insight, and it validates the high AQ creator model perfectly. Adoption for complex time-based media creation is stagnant. Weekly use for video generation is flat at 3%.
Only 3%.
And audio generation is also flat at just 2% weekly use.
That flat line for video and audio production, despite all the huge investment in these tools, that's the strongest possible argument against the idea that the machine can just do it all. It confirms that the saturation engine mostly produces static, easily digestible content.
It means that producing consistent, high-fidelity, long-form content, a cinematic universe, a full album, a complex narrative podcast like this one, still requires extensive human expertise, detailed cleanup, and a massive amount of post-generation effort to enforce narrative and visual coherence.
The tools exist, but mastering them for complex, consistent output takes a specialized human skill.
Which reinforces the competitive advantage of the high AQ model.
So for the ambitious creator, if you want to rise above that saturation engine and maintain your market value, the strategic imperative is crystal clear. You have to actively champion those human elements.
The original script writing, the specific direction, the decade-long expertise. You can't just rely on the machine to do the job for you. You have to masterfully direct the machine to execute your singular, detailed vision.
Okay, moving beyond the philosophical debate of slop versus art, we need to anchor ourselves in the practical, economic reality of AI adoption. Because it's being driven heavily by efficiency gains and streamlining, this is where AI moves from a fun toy to a serious industrial tool.
And the sheer market valuation tells that industrial story immediately. The global AI in media and entertainment market was valued at, around $25.98 billion in 2024?
Which is already huge.
It is, but the sources project it will skyrocket to nearly $100 billion, specifically $99.48 billion by 2030. That's a compound annual growth rate of 24.2%. That's just explosive, predictable growth, and it's rooted in concrete utility.
And this adoption isn't theoretical, it's pervasive. Up to 80% of movie, TV, and animation companies in the U.S. have either adopted or are actively planning to integrate generative AI into their established production workflows.
They're doing this for one simple reason. They've identified specific areas where it saves them vast amounts of time, crew resources, and therefore money.
Let's break that down. How is this integration actually happening across the classic production pipeline? Let's start with film and video. How are they streamlining those typically slow pre-production and scripting processes?
Pre-production, especially script analysis, is just ripe for automated enhancement. You have tools like ScriptBook that use machine learning to analyze scripts. They don't just count words. They use natural language processing and sentiment analysis to break down structural patterns, pacing, character arcs, dialogue complexity.
Wait, they're using data to predict commercial success. How does that even work in practice?
It works by comparing the script's detected patterns against a massive database of past films. It cross-references the structure with the financial outcomes. So ScriptBook can help filmmakers refine their narratives really early on.
So it might flag that a certain plot point statistically tends to lead to audience confusion or a drop-off in test screenings.
Exactly. It helps decision makers refine their creative approach to ensure better commercial outcomes before they spend a single dollar on shooting. It turns a creative risk into a quantifiable metric.
That's a powerful predictive tool. What about once the content is actually shot, or in Kerrigan's case, generated?
Post-production and visual effects, or VFX, are already deeply integrated. You have AI-powered tools like Adobe Sensei that are used for automatic color grading, sophisticated effects, and facial recognition for tracking.
Right.
We see this heavily in the complex, laborious task of de-aging or aging actors.
Right, like the de-aging of Robert De Niro and Al Pacino in The Irishman.
That's the famous example. That used to be an almost impossibly complex manual process. It required highly skilled VFX artists to digitally sculpt and paint textures onto faces, frame by painful frame.
And now?
Now, AI significantly streamlines this. It automatically tracks markers on the face, it analyzes texture details like wrinkles and pores, and it ensures that the replacement textures and lighting remain consistent across hundreds of moving frames. That level of visual fidelity is now achieved much, much faster.
Which frees up the human artists to focus on the high-level artistry, not the repetitive masking and tracking.
And the overall efficiency gains are dramatic. Industry analysis suggests AI integration can reduce total content production time by up to 30%.
30%, that's huge.
It's massive. And it's done by automating the most mundane, repetitive tasks, syncing audio and video, tracking continuity errors, performing initial scene classification. This lets the human editors and creatives focus entirely on creative decisions, narrative flow, and high-level polishing. The human talent gets to focus purely on the high AQ work.
And this efficiency isn't just confined to film, it's profoundly reshaping music and gaming too, right?
Oh, absolutely. In music composition, AI is acting as a rapid prototyping assistant. You have tools like MuseNet and Ampermusic that help artists quickly develop tracks and experiment with sounds by generating new melodies, harmonies, and rhythms.
So a composer can provide a genre and a mood, and AI just spits out variations they can adapt, rather than them spending hours manually laying down basic tracks.
It accelerates the ideation and development phase, but it still requires the artist to choose, to curate, and to perfect the final output.
And on the distribution side, AI is essential.
Essential for user retention. Streaming services are heavily dependent on engagement and discovery algorithms. We know, for instance, that 60% of Spotify users discover new music through their AI-powered recommendations. That system is analyzing everything to keep users on the platform.
And in gaming, AI is basically the backbone of these truly immersive environments.
In gaming, AI enables procedural generation. It's famously used in enormous worlds like Minecraft and No Man's Sky. It allows developers to create vast, complex, and unpredictable worlds instantly, keeping players engaged without having to manually design every single blade of grass.
And it also makes the characters smarter.
It does. AI is crucial for sophisticated behavior modeling for non-playable characters, or NPCs. The AI generates real-time, intelligent reactions to player actions, making the digital world feel alive. The data shows that 46% of game developers are specifically using AI tools to improve the fluidity and realism of character animations.
Okay, let's go back to that high AQ creator, like Kerrigan. Once they've finished their 120-hour high-quality video, they now have to repurpose that asset efficiently across 50 different social channels.
And this is where the true automation platforms come into play, specifically the API-first solutions.
This is where we see the rise of dedicated professional workflow tools, like the Auto Content API.
And the genesis of these tools is instructive. You have these popular manual workbenches like Google's Notebook LM, which were fantastic for individual creation, but lacked one critical feature: an official API, an application programming interface.
For those less familiar, what does the lack of an API mean in practical terms for a content manager?
It means you're stuck doing everything manually.
Yeah.
If you want to process 20 blog posts into 20 summary podcasts, you have to open the tool 20 times, paste the text 20 times, and click generate 20 times.
So you can't automate anything, you can't schedule tasks, you can't run batch processes efficiently.
Nothing. So Auto Content API and similar services are effectively automated factories built on top of the manual workbench, designed for scaling professional output.
They provide that programmatic access that developers and content teams need to build novel applications.
That's the perfect synthesis. A content team can use a platform like make.com-friend, which acts as the trigger to monitor their blog's RSS feed. A new blog post hits the feed. Make.com triggers the Auto Content API, which automatically generates a scripted audio briefing, maybe converts it to a short animated video, and schedules the whole package for upload.
That capability just drastically compresses the time needed for repurposing content. It maximizes the value of that high AQ original work. And the cost model provides a fascinating sort of financial insight into the economics of slop versus expertise.
It offers a clear, practical market constraint that's based on computational complexity. Our sources detail the credit cost structure. So, for instance, generating a standard text-to-speech audio podcast might cost a very low amount, maybe 10 credits.
Okay, pretty cheap.
But Generating a complex talking avatar video short using a different, more intensive API endpoint costs significantly more, potentially 400 credits.
400 credits versus 10. That is a vast cost difference. It isn't arbitrary, is it? It reflects the fundamental computational reality of the saturation engine versus the augmentation engine.
Exactly. Why does the high-fidelity video cost 40 times more than the audio?
I'm assuming it's the physics of rendering and consistency.
You've got it. Generating a high-fidelity video involves the machine calculating all these complex factors across hundreds of consecutive frames. The machine has to maintain consistent character appearance, synchronized lip movements, lighting, shadow consistency, background detail coherence, temporal stability.
It's a massive computational effort.
Especially in terms of VRAM and processing power, it is vastly more intensive than generating a simple linear text-to-speech file.
So the high cost acts as a natural economic barrier against the mass production of high-fidelity slop. If you try to pump out 1,000 bad videos, the financial cost quickly becomes prohibitive.
Precisely. When simple automated content is cheap, but complex high-fidelity content is expensive, even for a machine, it reinforces that eternal principle of garbage in, garbage out.
The final output quality remains highly dependent on the quality and detailed structure of the source content provided by the human creator.
The high AQ creator's expertise ensures the source material is good enough to justify that higher 400 credit cost. It makes it an investment, not just a cheap gamble.
So we've established that the tools enabling these high AQ creators to achieve Hollywood-grade entertainment from home are incredibly powerful. But that power is, well, it's dual use.
Of course.
The capability demonstrated by Kerrigan also enables the creation of super realistic content that can be and is being weaponized. We have to pivot now to the systemic risk posed by this high-fidelity generative content.
The ability of generative AI to create high-quality deepfakes profoundly supercharges the risk of organized disinformation and cybercrime. Researchers have identified several key qualities that make Gen AI a booster for the intentional spread of false and manipulative information.
Okay, let's break down this supercharging potential. What does that really mean?
In short, Gen AI makes disinformation campaigns faster, both in generating the content and in automatically distributing it via bot networks. Cheaper, by automating production and distribution, which drastically reduces the human and financial resources needed, and more persuasive through the seamless generation of super real high-fidelity deepfakes that are just increasingly indistinguishable from reality.
And it moves beyond just speed and realism into a strategic capability, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It also makes campaigns more customized. It uses AI software to analyze individual user data and identify highly effective personalized messages for narrowly defined target audiences.
And more far-reaching.
And critically, more far-reaching by automating distribution through AI bots and networks, allowing an actor to target millions of people simultaneously. Furthermore, AI can generate fake evidence for any claim instantly, which effectively reverses the burden of proof in the information ecosystem.
That last point about reversing the burden of proof that's perhaps the most powerful and dangerous development in digital trust.
It leads directly to the most insidious concept related to this risk. The mere existence of Gen AI creates what's called the liar's dividend.
The liar's dividend.
Yes. This means that bad actors can now discredit any piece of authentic, unwanted information, genuine investigative journalism, a candid photo, political criticism, just by dismissing it instantly as a deepfake or AI manipulation.
The implication is just massive. If everything can be faked, then nothing can be trusted, even if it's real. That fundamentally erodes trust in the information ecosystem itself.
That is the core societal consequence. If a politician or an organization is caught in a compromising situation, their immediate, no-cost defense is to just claim AI forgery. This allows them to avoid responsibility, to shift the debate to authenticity, and sow doubt among the public, even when the evidence is 100% genuine. It's a systemic poison.
However, our source material provides some critical context here. While political disinformation grabs all the headlines, the data suggests that it isn't always the primary target for these high-fidelity tools.
That is a crucial insight, and it's often missed in all the media noise. Deepfake technology and other AI manipulations are significantly more often used in organized cybercrime and cyberbullying than they are for large-scale political disinformation campaigns.
Because they're lower effort, higher return targets.
Exactly.
Can you provide more detail on these non-political misuses? How is AI amplifying cybercrime?
Cybercrime is exploiting the ease of high-fidelity generation for fraud. Organized groups, for instance, are cloning military or corporate profiles to perpetrate these elaborate financial fraud and romance scams. They use AI to generate highly convincing images, often placing a victim's face or voice into a believable but fake scenario, a military base, a high-rise office, to create an aura of authority and authenticity.
Which victims find hard to question. It significantly boosts the success rate of phishing and social engineering attacks.
Precisely. And we've seen high-profile examples of this fraud globally.
Right, like in South Africa, professional news anchors' images were stolen and cloned into deepfakes, showing them endorsing fraudulent investment schemes.
Absolutely. The visual trust associated with a known public face is leveraged by the AI to make the scam highly persuasive.
And what about cyberbullying, particularly deep porn attacks, which seem to be highly targeted?
This is the most damaging and personalized misuse. Deep porn attacks almost exclusively target prominent female journalists, influencers, and politicians. This is typically driven by criminal harassment actors.
And we've seen high-profile, damaging image attacks against the Italian prime minister, the German foreign minister, and U.S. celebrities like Taylor Swift.
These attacks are high fidelity, highly personalized, and profoundly harmful. They're often generated quickly and distributed widely for the sole purpose of reputational damage and harassment.
We still have to acknowledge the political use, though, especially by state actors who are intent on foreign interference.
Oh, yes. Despite the prevalence of cybercrime, political disinformation remains a serious, professionalized threat. Russia is highlighted as the most active foreign actor using AI for disinformation in Europe. They're employing all known forms of manipulation, including automated social media profiles and sophisticated bots in campaigns like Doppelganger.
We've also seen deepfake videos designed to smear candidates in the Argentinian presidential elections, and last-minute audio deepfakes used to influence voters in the Slovakian elections.
Yes, but the data strongly suggests that the aggregate use for cybercrime and cyberbullying still outweighs the documented use for political disinformation globally, simply because crime is easier to scale commercially.
So, given these systemic risks inherent in high-fidelity AI content, whether it's high-IQ art, financial fraud, or sophisticated political deepfakes, we arrive at the crucial necessity of trust, regulation, and ultimately, human oversight.
And the data reveals a significant comfort gap in public perception, particularly in the news industry, which is the key bellwether for trust in information.
The numbers are pretty startling, aren't they?
They are. Across several global surveys, only 12% of people expressed comfort with news made entirely by AI. That comfort level skyrockets to 62% for news made entirely by a human journalist.
So even when AI is used with some human oversight, the human-in-the-loop comfort only rises to 21%.
That is a strong mandate from the public. They clearly want human involvement, especially where credibility is key. This is the ultimate non-negotiable validation for the high AQ creator model. The machine must be an assistant, not the sole author.
And if we look at what uses people do accept, it reinforces that back-end, front-end distinction.
Absolutely. People are most comfortable with AI being used for back-end, mundane tasks that don't directly influence credibility. Comfort is highest for editing spelling and grammar at 55% and translation at 53%.
And they are least comfortable with front-facing uses, like artificial presenters or authors. That's a mere 19%.
So if the machine is just doing the digital filing and proofreading, people are fine. If the machine is delivering the story or being the voice, trust just collapses.
And their expectations for AI's impact on news quality.
People assume AI will make news cheaper to produce and more up-to-date, but they anticipate a negative trade-off. They expect it will make the news less transparent and less trustworthy.
So trust in news strongly correlates with the perception that journalists are routinely checking AI outputs before publication.
The human-in-the-loop system is paramount for retaining credibility, even if it adds friction to the process.
This inherent public skepticism is precisely why the global consensus on regulation has been built around transparency and mandatory oversight.
Indeed. Global normative documents spanning the G7 Hiroshima Declaration, OECD frameworks, and the European Union's groundbreaking EU AI Act, they all stress a small, core set of mitigation measures.
And the most critical is transparency.
Right. AI content must be clearly labeled as generated or manipulated with AI. They also stress the prohibition of deep porn content and emphasize the responsibility of platforms for detecting and deleting harmful content at scale.
But implementing these transparency rules seems incredibly difficult in practice, especially on platforms that rely on billions of pieces of user-generated content every day.
That is the core regulatory challenge. Although it's mandatory in major jurisdictions, platforms often just pass the obligation to label AI content onto the user, relying on self-disclosure. And the labels themselves are often small, unspecific, or, worst of all, easily disregarded by malicious actors.
We saw that stark example in Germany where a deepfake video of an opposition leader was posted with the self-designed label made with artificial incompetence.
A label that is deliberately misleading and just mocks the entire transparency requirement.
A completely insufficient mechanism for ensuring trust.
It is. And because of this lack of effective enforcement and the ease with which bad actors can ignore or misuse these guidelines, the requirement for the high AQ creator, the human with ethics, discipline, skill, and intent, is even more acute. The quality of the human determines the integrity of the information ecosystem. The high AQ artist elevates the tool above the level of slop and transforms it into an augmentation engine.
So if we synthesize everything we've talked about today, from George Miller's historical context to the immense 120-hour effort of the Neural Viz creator, what is the ultimate conclusion for the future of creative work?
I think the ultimate takeaway is the synthesis of that necessary dichotomy we started with. AI provides immense efficiency, scale, and accessibility. It is the ultimate resource compressor and production streamliner for the artist. It allows an individual to achieve the work of an entire studio.
But
But the final quality of the content, its coherence, its emotional resonance, and its moral impact remain entirely dependent on the creative discipline, technical expertise, and moral intent of the human creator. The machine only executes. The human must define and direct the mastery.
the quality of the human determines the quality of the machine's output. But before we wrap up, we touched on the terrifying potential of AI being used for mass, organized disinformation. We mentioned that currently malicious actors are leveraging AI features separately. They might generate high-quality content or use bots for mass spread, but we haven't seen them truly link all capabilities seamlessly.
That's the gap this deep dive highlighted. The failure of malignant actors to fully integrate all the supercharging elements. No disinformation actor or political campaign has yet leveraged all the alleged supercharging features of generative AI simultaneously.
Which raises our final provocative thought for you to consider, building on the systemic risk we identified. What happens to the information ecosystem and to trust itself when malignant actors finally cross this line?
What happens when they begin deploying fully automated, highly customized, personalized, and high-quality influence attacks that leverage every generative AI supercharging feature speed, persuasiveness, customization, and massive reach all at the exact same moment?
That moment when the infinite output of the saturation engine and the high-fidelity capabilities of the augmentation engine fully converge in the hands of actors seeking to deceive, that will define the future resilience of our democracies and our media.
It's a massive challenge we all need to be ready for.
A truly sobering thought to end on. Thank you for joining us on the Deep Dive.